are we going to stretch your mind today with ET technology? We're going to fly all over the universe with the fabulous Chris O'Connor. Jesus, sorry. I'm just listening to myself talking back. Oh, having fun today. Anyway, we're going to go all over the universe with out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, super soldier information, and all sorts of things. It's really going to stretch your mind and mine, and it's going to be a fascinating show. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello. Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive. You've unmuted yourself, fabulous. with Karen Swain, expanding and awakening consciousness. We are on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. Syndicated radio. We're touching around 120 countries, streaming on 8 platforms. And we've got a bit of an audience saying, g'day. Let me have a look. Sherry's here. Vladdy's here. Hello there. Hello. And so we've got the fabulous Chris O'Connor. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, fabulous. I was just telling Chris before we went live that I was, surfing through Rumble or I can't remember which video platform, and I saw him talking. And I thought, what's he got to say? And what he was saying was very much in alignment with what my guides tell me. And I'm like, this guy knows some stuff. But then he's got that super soldier story. And I was a little unsure about the whole super soldier stuff. But we're going to find out more. I have had Tony Rodriguez on the show before a couple of years ago, who also has been in the super soldier program. And he's fascinating too. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And I'm going to quiz you all about it today, Chris.
Good.
Sherry says hi. Zin says hi. Lots of hellos. Alison, hey, Alison. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, we've got a live audience, as you can see and hear, and people ask your questions. If you have questions, I've got a lot of them. And if you're skeptical, ask your skeptical questions. But let me tell you a little bit about Chris. So after multiple near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, leading to years of deep introspection and inner seeking, Chris O'Connor learned the importance of understanding the universe to be a consciousness, and all things are based on vibration and frequency. This led him to understand the subtle energies available to us all. Chris incarnated on Earth in 1968 in Glendale, California. His life included access to the feature film industry, working shoulder to shoulder with some A-list celebrities. He was a journalist working for large international publishers and researched, designed, and built exhibitions for acclaimed science museums across the world. Yeah, you've done a lot in this one physical lifetime, Chris. You've done a lot. You look too young to have done all that. Apart from having 60 years out there in space as a super soldier doing a whole lot of other stuff, you've packed it in. And so in 2020, Chris invented the DEAMS device. Through a powerful magnetic field, the DEAMS device focuses ambient Earth energy, creating a slight, how do you say that word? Piezoelectric. And creates a vortex of energy. Anyway, and it's a healing device. It works with the nervous system and it relieves pain and assists in healing and balancing the energy of the body. And I think that you got this from your galactic friends, right? You got this technology from your galactic friends.
Yes.
Yeah. So as I say, your story is going to stretch a few minds. It definitely stretches mine, and I'm going to quiz you about it. Let's hear about, it starts at 2 years old. So let's hear about what happened to you at 2.
Okay. So I was, like you say, I was 2 years old. That was in Glendale, California. I was in my crib, in my room, off of the living room, and the door was open, and I was watching an episode of Outer Limits. I'm not sure how I remember all this, but I do, and I remember exactly
Yeah.
what episode it was. And so I'm standing there watching that episode, and suddenly this man appears between me and the doorway, just appeared there. Then he reaches down into the crib and picks me up, like hands under the arms, like he didn't really want to be picking me up. It was kind of like outstretched like that. And then next thing I know, we were in a hallway somewhere. And I don't remember any kind of time going by. And it couldn't have been because my parents were just feet away. They were facing away, but they were close. So anyway, we are walking down this hallway and he's still carrying me, like he's taking out the garbage, And we go into a room that I can only describe as a laboratory. I don't remember a lot about it, but I've had conversations since then and just kind of put the pieces together with other people that knew about that situation. So he takes me over and hands me to this lady. And she was wearing, like a smock, like something you would wear in a emergency room just to cover herself up entirely. She undresses me. I think I only had like a diaper or something. I don't know what it was. But then she wipes me down with these cloths, and it's to, I guess it was to, to kill any bacteria. And, like before you have a surgery, they wipe that surgical area down to kill all the stuff on the surface of the skin. So she did that. And here I am like crying, of course. And then she goes over to this tank. Now this tank is like a tube, so it's round and it's long enough for my small body to go into. And so it has this like a pink lavender gel in it. It's like thicker than water, but not like gelatin. And so she places me in this tank, and she pushes me down to the bottom under this gel, and she compresses because her hand is large, right? I'm only 2, so her hand is over my belly and my chest. And so she compresses all the air out of me so that I will breathe in this gel, which obviously was traumatic. Then I think she might have done that twice. And then, of course, I'm struggling, I'm drowning, and I'm looking up at her face through this gel. And the only thought I remember is what's happening, So what it is this gel rapidly grows human tissue or any tissue, but they have to actually grow the gel based on your DNA. You can't use other person's DNA. It won't grow anything. They'll just drown you, and you won't grow. So anyway, she does this. And then the next part is even worse, unfortunately. Throughout this whole outside of this tube, this horizontal round tube, there are these little rubber, they're like bunghole stops, for you have a hole in a barrel, you put a bunghole to stop, but they can put needles through it. So that they're covering the outside of this tube. So what they do is they suspend me like somewhere in the center of this tube, and then they start inserting needles all in my body, all the way around in the brain. And they're going to all the critical organs and all the tissue, the joints, everywhere, within the body. And the reason for this is because that gel on the outside will grow whatever it penetrates, but it has to penetrate everything at the same rate. So they put needles in, and then that way everything grows at the same time, same rate. Now, fortunately, this gel was a bit of a anesthetizing quality, so it wasn't painful per se, but it wasn't fun. But then I don't remember much at all after that for a few weeks.
Let me just interject here. These are memories that I've heard you say on other shows that you've had all your life that you just thought were some fantasy, right?
Yes.
And then you had some experiences which showed you that there were actually a reality, I'm going to say a reality that you experienced.
Yes.
Because we can experience many realities. They don't necessarily have to be physical realities. They can be other dimensional realities.
Yes.
My question is, why did they go to the pains of doing all that, like trying to grow a baby body into it? Like, can't they just clone bodies? Can't they just clone why go to all the, maybe you don't know the answer to this.
I do, actually.
Okay, tell me. Tell us.
It's pivotal, in fact. Thank you for asking.
Uh-huh.
There are two ways to get a copy. I don't like to call them clones just personally because, they're just a literal physical copy of one person to the other because there's nothing in there. A clone can have consciousness and these don't. They're copies, and they're in there for emergencies. So the reason, they can clone anyone, and they clone many people, and it's much easier than this, especially on the individual, because there's no consciousness experiencing this horrific scenario.
Right.
But it turns out later I remembered, with help from guidance and just meditation and trying to bring in memories, that I agreed to do it before I was born. And the reason is because I and my soul family had certain goals that we wanted to achieve on Earth to assist humanity in this time of evolution and enlightenment. And the best thing I could do, for my skills, was to work with other races. And the only way to do that was to be born into a body and then grow that body rapidly, because the consciousness is still intact in the pineal gland. And when you have a copy, you have to move the consciousness over. And so there's a risk involved in that. It's not a big risk, but there is a risk that you could lose that consciousness, like, accidentally bump a button, and then suddenly they're floating back to their native race and their soul family, and then they can't do their work. So it's more stable to do that, to grow you versus implant you.
Okay. So these concepts have been explored through the film industry. Avatar, obviously, they've grown a body and they've taken someone's consciousness and put it into that avatar. And I've discussed this on a few shows. Altered Carbon, which I wouldn't recommend anyone watch because it's so bloody violent, but it's the same concept. Like, you have this sleeve, they call it a sleeve, which is your physical body that is not you. And so if it dies, okay, I'll just get another sleeve and
move over.
Yeah, just move. But we're doing that anyway. Like, when we're incarnating on Earth, we're doing that. Like, we're moving our consciousness or a part of our consciousness into our sleeve or our physical body. And then when we reincarnate, we're choosing another one. And like, it's happening as a part of the human spirit experience anyway.
Yes.
But you're talking about it in a whole new way, which is stretching my mind. And I'm sure it's going to stretch other people's minds. So they grow your 2-year-old body. You become a man of what, in your 20s? Mid-20s.
Yeah.
And then what do they want to do with this physical form?
Well, my agreement was I would dedicate 20 years to the United States military complex, which I did. And I spent, as far as I can remember, I don't have a lot of memories of that, but the best I can remember is I was out in the deserts of California, southeast or southwest United States. And I was in some DUMBs, some deep underground military bases that they have. And I was in a number of places, but mostly on Earth. I don't remember too much off the planet. I didn't go off the planet for 20 years until I gave my 20 years to the United States. And then I was moved to a space station outside the rings of Saturn, called the moon is called Mimas, M-I-M-A-S. That's actually a space station. It's not just a moon. It's a natural body, but it was in higher frequencies and higher vibrations, you see different things. You know, it's like if you're in a room and there's somebody that's passed on, a loved one is in the room with you, we can't see them because they're at a different vibrational rate our eyes can't see. So you go to Mimas, for example, and you can't, all you see is this rocky moon that looks like, you know, any other moon. But really, we have what we call density engines. That's what I call them. I don't remember the name the military called them. But once you get there, you know, to your location, you turn on these density engines, and it creates this skin of electricity around the ship, the entire ship, no matter how big it is. And then you can adjust the vibrational state of that outer skin. And then that moves you into the upper densities. And then you can dock with it. And you can exit the ship and you're on this space station.
Whoa. Okay, so you said that you were working for the American military on Earth, the secret space program.
Yes.
So this is real? The secret space program is real?
Well, I don't remember if that's what if the military calls it. They probably just call it, you know, whatever, you know, program they're on at the moment, you know, mission or what have you. But that's what we colloquially
Call it. Yeah. That's what we call it. And what are they doing? So the military, I have a couple of brothers that work in and around the military. What are they doing that is not, you know, like what are they doing in this other covert military program that we're not allowed to know, like the human population are allowed to know?
Right. And as a side note, all the other races I worked with do not like that you and I don't know. They're like, that's dishonest. You gotta tell your people that none of the world governments are cleaned up enough for that to happen. So anyway, I talked your question right out of my head. What was?
Oh, what are they doing? Like, what do they do in this secret military? What do they do?
Well, they do a tremendous number of things. The United States, I can only speak for what I have in memories or, you know, what I know. The United States has thousands and thousands of ships that can travel off planet. Mm-hmm. Many of the biggest ones, one which is almost the size of Manhattan Island in New York, they're just massive, obviously. And those are being built. There's another planet. This shocks everybody. There's another planet in gravitational lock with Earth. The sun's in the middle and we're gravitationally locked. And so wherever we go, we can never see this other planet. I don't believe it's as big as the Earth, but it's full of minerals and they have refineries and they build the big ships there because the gravity is much easier. And nobody knows they're doing it, so they can sneak on. That's not just the U.S., that's a number of nations. Australia is one of them. And so they're building ships. They have, last I knew, this is years ago, about 122 different locations, whether it's an asteroid or whether it's on a planet or planetoid or a moon or another whole star system. There's about 120 different colonies of Earth humans. Now I say Earth humans because there are humans that are not from Earth, you know, but Earth humans. And some of those colonies are not our friends. And so they create a lot of problem and trouble. And so that was one of my jobs, was to like smooth out all the problems they would cause on Mimas, you know, so.
So these memories, let's explore how you came to know this as your truth. Like when you eventually came back into your 2-year-old body, another mind-stretching thing. So they shrunk your body back down to a 2-year-old.
Well, they didn't actually shrink it.
They didn't shrink it.
They made a copy that was 2.
Oh.
So yes. So it was not, and I know that kind of makes people weirded out, but this isn't the body I was born in. This is my fourth body since I was born.
Well, you know what? Here's the truth about that. None of us are wearing the body we're born in. I
No.
mean, within 2 years, every cell in your body is a new cell. Every cell. Like the body is constantly dying and reborn, like nobody is born in the body.
No, we're all
Like
new all the time, really.
all of it. Like in 2 years, we'll have a completely new body to the body that we're wearing today. So that's possible.
Yeah.
That's just the way the human body works.
Yes.
And I want to hear how you remembered, like how you got to, know that these memories that you had were real, were true, were a part of your truth anyway.
Gosh, that was a journey of introspection and self-acceptance. And when people ask me, how do they remember things? I'm like, well, the first thing you have to do is trust yourself. You have to know that you will not lie to yourself, that you're being entirely honest. And so the first part of my life, of course, and I don't blame my family at all. Whenever I'd say things like, there are people standing in my room, or there's this creatures in my room, and they'd be, oh, it's just your imagination. I'm like, oh, they don't look imaginary. So I had to learn to accept the fact, despite the fact everybody's telling me that it's in my imagination, or I have, something wrong with me. So you have to get to the point where that's not the case. So once I got to that point, then a lot of other memories began to come in. And then other memories that I'd always had that just didn't make sense. They're fragmented. They're not like full memories, of full events. I'm a visual person. So I see visually a scenario that has happened at some point in time. May not even know where. And then I will remember something else, possibly unrelated, that connects in some way. And then I can put the context of that memory together. And that takes years. I started doing that 20 some years ago. Quietly, of course, not telling too many people. Because when I did, be like, you shouldn't tell anybody else that. You sound crazy. They're going to put you away. Like, it's still true. So it was the process of really doing that, and then spending a lot of time in meditation, spending a lot of time trusting myself and trusting the information and learning to speak with my guidance. That's a big thing. Once you can hear them clearly,
Absolutely.
it changes your life.
Absolutely. And everyone's got guidance. Yeah. You don't need to be special. It's not a human on earth that doesn't come with a spiritual team tagging behind them, speaking to them. And that team might be galactics and angels and fairies and all sorts of forms of consciousness. Anything, yeah. Where did the NDEs, the near-death experiences, come in? Like, did you have that in this body, in this life? Like, where does that come in?
I did. The first one, I was 9 years old. I was in California, and I went to a friend's house. He was like, swam like a fish, So they had a pool. And he got on the slide. We just got there, and he got on the slide and slid down. And my first thought is, oh, that looks fun. So I got on the slide and slid down, and I landed in the water, and I realized I don't know how to swim. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I get out now? I don't know where he was all this time, but I was in there for a bit, and I came up. It's weird how your brain thinks, because I'm thinking, okay, there's a surface to this water. So all I have to do is get my head above it, put my hands out, and pull myself out, push down. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there I am doing that. And I did that 3 times. And after the 3rd time, my brain just gave up, and I was there, and my whole body, everything gave up. It became very peaceful, and the sun was shining. And I'm sinking to the bottom of the pool, and I had taken a breath, tried to, and it burned because of the chlorine. But as I was sinking down, I was looking up, and the surface of the water was getting further and further away. And what I saw was all of this sunlight coming through, and all the bubbles leaving my lungs. And I was watching the bubbles, just how they do. They go up. And go to the surface, and as they would, move, the sunlight would hit them and it would sparkle, and it was beautiful. And my last thought, well, before my last thought, as I was looking at those bubbles, looking straight up, I saw this figure. It was of a woman, a blonde woman. But it's impossible because she would have been floating just above the water in the middle of the pool. Because remember, I went on the slide, so I was like way in the middle of the pool.
Mm.
And you can't do that. So I saw that woman, I saw the bubbles and how beautiful it was. And my last thought was, how beautiful. And then I just relaxed. And I'm like, okay, I'm dying. It's okay. Well, shortly after that, then I kind of went out. And shortly after that, they were able to pull me out and bring me back. So that was my NDE, near-death experience.
So did you have memory of what, when you left your body, like that woman, did she talk to you?
No, I didn't remember that she was even there for a long time. I always just focused on the bubbles. And then I was like, one day in meditation, I'm like, because it's the same visual that I always carried. And I realized that that's not a surface, being, undulating with the light. That's a person floating, facing me, floating above the water. So it was a guide. It was an angel. It was, I don't know who it was,
But you don't have memory of like them talking to you out of body and tell us that, helping
not that time.
the 9-year-old. Lisha has a question here about the planet that's in our solar system. Is it in our solar system, the gravitationally locked planet? Is that located in our solar system?
Yes, it's the other side of the sun. So imagine, the sun's in the middle. We're both, gravitationally locked to the sun. So our Earth goes around it this way and it goes around it this way, just like the moon goes around the Earth. So they're connected gravitationally speaking.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've never heard anyone else say that before. Drowning, Alison says, drowning is such a peaceful way to transition once you let go.
Yes.
I drowned at 6 and still remember it fondly at 62.
Alison and I agree entirely. I'm like, when I go, please let it be this beautiful. It was so remarkable. It really was. The first few seconds are not fun, but once your brain clicks in and goes, okay, it's over, just chill, then it's just heavenly.
Yeah, years ago, when I was young, I had a friend that had drowned, and he never said anything about an afterlife. I don't think he said anything to his friends because he thought he'd be ridiculed, but I quizzed him, and he said the same thing. He said, drowning was so beautiful. I said, what happened, after you left your body? And he's like, nothing. And then he started remembering stuff. And then he was about to tell me, and then he pushed it back in, and he's like, nope. Like he wouldn't say anything because he thought, God, that was like 40 years ago now. But anyway, I remember him saying how beautiful it was to drown.
Yeah, it really was.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get this in a linear fashion. So 2-year-old, you're taken out of body, you're stretched into a human, you do 20 years in the military in that human body, and then you do another 40 years with the same mob, same group, same military, or you go to other planets?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I have what you call a handler. Everybody does that works off planet. You have like your commanding officer, your superior. We call them handlers. See, I was a little different. I wasn't in the military complex. Like if you enter the military, I was more of a subcontractor. So you brought me in that way. So my path was slightly different. And so that's why, and that we planned that ahead of time. My guidance and I, we actually met with the U.S. military before I was ever born. We met on a ship that the U.S. has, and we made a plan, and we're like, all right, let's do it.
What form were you in when you met? Like, were you an orb? What form were you in?
No, I was in physical form, but not third density Earth physical form. It's a higher density physical form. And, I never, I've had glimpses of myself, but I don't know, I've never found it necessary to really know exactly. I do know that I'm part of a race that used to, or that still does, build suns. It's all from natural material. They go out and they instigate, certain nuclear fission, and then it brings all this materials together. Then they add materials to it, so they can actually make a sun of a certain size, of a certain type of light, and a certain type of, information. So I remember I'm part of that group, and we're very, very tall and very thin. I mean, like, I think if I compared it to myself, I'm 6'1". I think that we'd probably be closer to 14 to 16 feet tall, but
Wow.
very, like, that wide, super thin.
Wow. Kristen says, hey, Chris, Corey and I are excited to listen. And Vladdy says that he's had so many dreams in which he drowned. Maybe you've drowned in a past life, Vladdy. Okay. Where am I going with this? To me, it feels like, we can all gain access to memories of other lives, both in the past and the future. I have I think I have more memories of my future lives than I do of my past lives. So it sounds to me like that you have memories of yourself in a future life or a past life that's outside of time, even though your physical body was involved in some way. It's all quite confusing.
I do have a lot of memories of glimpses of other lives. Yes.
But these lives in the military, like, you've come back into your 2-year-old body, back into the same time you were taken. So
Yes.
It was outside of time. It was outside of time.
And that technically hasn't happened yet. That won't happen until 2030.
What won't happen?
I won't be returned until 2030. Yeah. Ponder that.
I'm already confused. Don't confuse me anymore.
It's actually very easy to jump timelines when you have the right technology. It's just frequency and vibration and waves. Time is a wave.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't know how to use it, how to, adjust. And that's part of what Earth militaries have traded with other races that are, maybe millions of years older than us. They have all this technology, and, they share some of it. They trade it.
Yeah. Oh boy. There's a book called The Thioba Prophecy, which I talk about a lot. And there was a French Australian guy that was taken to another planet, and the being that took him was from a 9th category planet. And they said that Earth is like a 1st category planet. We're not talking density or dimension. We're talking category of planet within the 4th and 3rd dimension, just the category of the education, the consciousness, the information available, the access to awareness of who we really are. And like, we're right down at the bottom. It's just so much.
Yeah.
It's just so much to learn. When you talk about ETs making suns, I think of Mary Rodwell. Do you know who Mary Rodwell is?
I don't know.
She's an Australian hypnotherapist who's been working predominantly with children, star children, who are here in their human form, but they know they've come from elsewhere in the cosmos to be here for the evolution of human consciousness. And some of them have said, she says, what are you doing when you're not a human? And we're like, I'm creating universes and planets, and, out there in their spiritual body or whatever body they're in, they're a part of a team that is creating life throughout the cosmos. And so when you say you're creating suns, it doesn't love Mary Rodwell. Yeah, I know Mish says love Mary Rodwell. I mean, what is available? When I watched Avatar for the first time, I thought about the designers that designed the animals that were in, and the planet and the whole thing, the Avatar. Like, you sat down at a drawing board, and to me, I feel like there are people out there beyond physical form that are designing animals, that we have on Earth, like the sea creatures, and it's all being designed. We can design planets and design universes and suns. Like, the mind of God is designing all the time.
It's the energy of manifestation and the energy of thought, which are the same thing. Those energies are the same. So
Diane says, hi, Karen and Chris, a little late, but glad to be here. We're having a wild time, Diane. I'm confused. Okay, so just to reiterate, do I need to do a station break? Do a bit of a station break. You're listening to Karen Accentuating the Positive on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio all over the place. I think we're streaming We're touching about 120 countries and streaming on about 8 different platforms. And my guest today is Chris O'Connor, who has had out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. He's a contactee. He's an ET. He's a human, and an ET in a human form. He's been in the Super Soldier program, and he's an ET communicator. And we're just unpacking, unwinding his experience, which is confusing me. But so you had the near-death experience at 9, and then you had more near-death experiences?
Well, I did. I was in a coma at one time in the hospital. For the coma lasted 9 days. It was induced. And I was all over the place. I was out of the body. I don't even know for sure where I was. So that was my first experience of being out in the cosmos and disconnected from my body. And every 12 hours, I would be brought back into my body because they would inject me with something to wake me up. Barely wake me up to see if my brain was still alive. They'd be screaming at me,
Okay.
So I was just going through the universe, just exploring things. And then I didn't have anybody with me that I remember. I was just kind of on my own, except for my grandfather. I knew he was around. He was like kind of behind me watching things. Whatever I would do, he'd be right back there. But mostly I was just traveling through just open space, like as if I was flying, and just those type of memories. So it was nothing significant that time. But I did have an out-of-body experience, and that came from I was young. I was about 21 or so, and I was at a club somewhere in a big city, and I was drugged and kidnapped, and I was gone for over a week, up to 2 weeks, but I don't remember much of it. I was moved around via a limousine. They would just throw me in the back of a limousine, and we'd show up at some other person's house, and they would do whatever they wanted with me. And so that lasted for a little while. And then one night, I think it was in the evening, I could hear, I was lying on a bed in a small room, small window, and the window was to my right, and I could hear, there was a door, small room and a door. I could hear 2 men in the hallway talking, and they were talking about what they were going to do with the body. We're going to go to the desert. We're going to go to the ocean. What are we going to do? So just at that moment, I popped out of my body, not because I meant to, because I was drugged, but I was pulled out of my body by, I don't know, my guidance. I can only assume.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at myself lying on the bed. And now I can hear the men still talking, but in my right ear. So I was facing the opposite direction, looking at me. And then I heard, "You must leave now." And then suddenly I could feel somebody slapping me in the face like that really fast, just trying to wake me up. Open my eyes, and there's this dark shadow of a human shadow. And I thought it was something negative for a long time, but I realized later it was just guidance trying to wake me up and get me out of there. They'll do whatever they have to do in those moments. Yeah. So I crawled out the window. I wasn't very far from an ER, and I went to the ER and got some help. And they didn't believe. They just thought I was, drugged
a crazy
out.
nut job.
Yeah,
druggy. So how old were you when that happened?
About 2021. Yeah.
What did they want to do with you when they kidnapped you? Have sex with you?
Whatever they wanted. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I do have a lot of memories of that, but there's no need to share it. It's just
no.
Unsafe.
Yeah. Best left in the past.
And it's not the worst thing that happened to me.
Why is your soul or your oversoul, your higher self, giving you so many experiences and traumatic experiences in this lifetime? What is the purpose for you to have all these experiences?
The purpose for me is to grow my soul as quickly and strongly as possible. that's just who I am. It's like, I don't want to do something twice. I'll learn the lesson now, painful as it is. I'll learn it now, so that's my mentality. It doesn't matter what body I'm in or, what planet I'm on. I've always had that thought pattern. And I always make things as difficult as possible, not wanting to do that, but I know that because we watch before we're born, if you've had enough lifetimes and you're capable of doing this, you can watch a monitor and you can put in parameters of your life and see where that takes you. Because we all have goals of what we want to accomplish before we leave. And so if I have this experience, if I'm kidnapped at this point in time, will it get me to my end goal of helping and sharing and bringing enlightenment and love to humanity? And I looked at it, I'm like, absolutely. And I'm like, crap. I'm like, I'm not going to enjoy that.
Okay, I just want to unpack this for our human minds, because from your soul's perspective, that totally makes sense. But from this perspective, not so much. So,
not a little.
Have you heard of Natalie Sudman?
No.
She wrote a book called The Application of Impossible Things. So she was blown up in a bomb blast in Iraq. She was working as a contractor for the military, and she had this amazing near-death experience. And she was talking about, from that other side, her and her buddy, her guide, were designing her injuries. And they were saying, let's see what happens if we make her blind in one eye. And then they would look down that timeline and watch her live a life to the end as a blind person. Let's cripple her and see what. So they were exploring from that perspective the different, and they were having a great old time. They were laughing as she was stumbling through life, as they were watching her in her human life, stumbling through life with one leg or whatever. And most people cannot get that, from this perspective. But from that perspective, you understand it's a play that you're in. It's something that you're designing.
Because you're here to evolve your soul and become a better human soul, or just a better soul in general. And that soul is millions and millions of years old. Or it certainly will be. If you started on Earth, you're not quite there yet, but you will be millions and millions of years old. So if you're living, a million years, your soul, and then you come to this planet and you're going to live 70 to 90 years, that's nothing. So a lot of discomfort for that period of time is worth it, because first of all, Earth is well known for being, if you want to evolve your soul quickly, this is in the whole galaxy, mind you. If you want to evolve your soul quickly, incarnate on Earth. That place is tough. And it is. So, not everybody comes to a difficult planet, because maybe they haven't evolved to that point where they're ready for that.
Yeah.
But apparently I was, and I've been on Earth a number of times. And
so for people that, to help the human understanding, how does being kidnapped, held hostage, sexually abused, and then escaping and running to a hospital and then not being believed, how does that help your soul evolve?
Because when I was about 10 years old, my mother, we were fundamentalist Christian, and she told me that if you ask God for one thing, only one thing in your life, God will grant that thing. So I thought and thought. I thought, what would I ask him for? Your first thought is wealth and fame, right? I'm like, no, that'd be nice, but no. And then the next thing that came to my mind was compassion for humanity. I'm like, oh, that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because when you ask for compassion, you're going to have some tough experiences so that you can understand the suffering of others. And that's why my life has been, chock full of interesting and difficult scenarios, but I love every single one. I wouldn't change a thing.
Some people would say that if you were kidnapped and raped and held hostage, that you would hate humanity after that rather than have compassion.
It's quite a test to give yourself, isn't it?
So you're saying that because I went through these experiences, when I meet others that have been through these experiences, other people that are angry or hate life or hate the human race, or that just hate. You understand how they got there because you've experienced.
And I can help them.
Yeah.
And just say, listen, it's okay. You chose it, because we all chose all of our experiences. We all chose them, and we chose them for a reason. So I tell them, don't waste the opportunity to grow your soul in this difficult time. Because most of the time we're never taught that. We're taught, get over it and move on.
Right.
Like, no, that's not it either. We got to look at it, understand it, forgive those who are responsible, and forgive yourself for allowing it to happen. And then once you do all of that, I promise you, the feeling that lifts off of your soul is life-changing.
Yeah. Well, you definitely put a lot on your plate. I had this beautiful woman on the show years ago who's since disappeared. She was abducted by grey aliens, and she wrote a book called From Fear to Love, because during her abductions, she was in a lot of fear, and then she realized that these beings were her friends, and not only were they her friends, she was one of them, and she went from fear to love. But she said that she had this experience of doing planning her lifetime in a grey body as a grey, and saying, I'm going to go and have an earth experience as a human, and looking at the smorgasbord of things that we can experience: death, divorce, disease, drama, and piling them on her plate, so to speak, and saying, yeah, I'll be up for that, and I'll be up for that, and I'll be up. But she was doing this not as a spirit or as a soul, but as a grey alien, saying, yeah, I'm going to come to Earth. And then her guides, who were also grey aliens, were saying, you sure you want to put all that on your plate? And from that perspective, she said, yeah, I could do it. And then, she comes into the human form. It's like, what was I thinking?
There is a danger in doing that. Well, there's a danger incarnating on Earth no matter what.
Right.
Because if we are incarnate, we're all meant to forget. We have to have that veil of forgetting in front of us. And suddenly, if you don't do any kind of work, you don't bring in any memories, you don't trust yourself for things you do remember, then you can get caught up in the Earth cycle. And if you never remember who you are, you're going to get reincarnated over and over and over as a human being until you do. And that's why I decided to share my story, because people needed to be aware of that. You don't have to remember everything, but just know that there's more to this than you're not what you think you are. You're something much more amazing and beautiful. That's why I tell people, listen, I don't say what I say to be believed. I really don't care what people think of me. I honestly don't. I say what I say to be heard, because someday it'll help you.
Yeah, to stretch people's minds. You're stretching mine. Okay, Mish here says, is everyone on Earth on a soul path, or are some here to help others on their path?
All the above can apply. Some people come here to do multiple things. I came here to evolve my soul. I also came here to help humanity, by telling them crazy things to open their mind. We're all here usually for multiple things, because there's we have our contract agreement that we make with others, in our soul family usually. And so you make a plan to find a way to, other people that we come together and while we're incarnate on Earth. And then so you try to figure out how that's going to happen. Then there's the soul agreements. And the soul agreement is your own agreement that you make with yourself. So there's a soul contract and a soul agreement. And the agreement is what you agree to go through to evolve your own soul.
Right. Yeah. And, this thing about getting trapped on Earth, I don't condone to that understanding. I don't think a soul can ever be trapped. I was discussing that with someone. If you're experiencing the Earth experience and you didn't like it, you don't have to come back to sort of complete your karma. You can just say, no, I'm not going back. But from that soul perspective, remember, a completely different perspective than the human perspective. You usually don't make that decision because you understand.
Yeah. And then
the
when you're
benefit.
up there and you're going through the whole life plan, you're like, okay, I'll go back. it's worth it.
Yeah,
What
you can see the benefit of it all. Like you can see in the trauma and the suffering,
yeah.
how it's growing your soul, as you say. Alison says here, what are you saying here, Dave? I did tell my team that I was talked into coming back without borders.
That happens a lot.
You see, that's how you feel when you're a human. That's how you feel when you're a human. You just can't imagine. Mish says, "Thank you." Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't imagine that what you're going through and the crap that you go through here on Earth, that you ever chose it,
Ever choose.
and that you would ever choose it.
Look at
Yeah,
it like
so
this. If you're a parent and you have a child, and if you suffer something, if there's something that you're going to suffer that's going to benefit that child in a tremendous way, in a positive, beautiful way, would you not be willing to do that? So just imagine that when you're the parent, you're upstairs looking at the lifetime, and you're also the child. So would you not make choices that's best for that child, even if it doesn't seem like it to the child?
yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Okay, so getting back to your story, how did being taken at 2 years old, being grown into from a 2-year-old body into a man in his 20s, and spending 60 odd years out in the cosmos working for secret space programs and being off planet and a whole lot of stuff that I don't think we've even got time to go into, but you say you're going to put it all in a book. How did that help you in your human experience as Chris O'Connor? And what was the soul contract for being the Chris O'Connor, the human? And why did you experience all that or remember those experiences?
Well, I think part of why I remembered it was because I had set it up in a way that not only would things happen in my life to trigger memories, but I've had other races also put what they call switches in my brain, so that when I have some scenario that happens and this memory pops in, then other memories are unlocked and they come in. And so I have had help. I set that up at the beginning before I ever came. And so there's that. So I've had those memories based on help from other races as well.
Yeah. Lisha says here, so in 2030, you will be returning back to your galactic family. Does that mean this lifetime will have been completed?
In 2030, I leave the space station of Mimas and I come back to the United States, Earth, as a 2-year-old. They will wipe my memory, and they'll put me in a 2-year-old body and put me back in my crib in 1970. And then I'll live this body out. I'll live this life out. So it's not necessarily a loop. It really closes the loop once that happened. I'm around for a few more years after that. Not many, but a few.
Well, 2030 is not far away. It's only 5 years away.
I know.
You're still young, so you're not going to live to an old man in this lifetime.
No.
Okay, fair enough. You've got other lives to live.
60 now, so you know.
How old are you now? You're in your 50s, aren't you?
57.
57.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll probably hit what, about 70?
I'll be 66 when I leave.
66 when you leave, which
Yeah.
is pretty young.
Yeah.
Why will you leave at 66? Because the Earth is going through an exponential shift. Don't you want to stick around to see what happens?
I already know what happens.
What happens? Come on, tell us. Okay, what happens?
Okay, before 2100, closer to 2100 than now, the Earth is so different. It is beautiful. There are no longer negative or neutral souls, human souls, being born. The only positive souls are being born, and that process has already begun.
Yeah.
And so over the next few decades, all the negative folks will go to another place that supports that frequency and vibration. all the neutral people that haven't done the work, that are still sleeping, will go to another planet that's full third density, like Earth has been for so long, and they will continue their third density experience. And so what's left? But all the positive people. Not to say there won't be challenges, not to say there won't be like weather, and it's a living planet, things are going to happen. But we won't have the negativity we have now. And many races will have already begun interacting with us on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's
And
very
it's a
exciting.
beautiful place. It's a
But when
beautiful.
you say negative souls, I don't think any souls are negative. There's
Well,
just, and I
it's
don't think any people are negative, but there are negative thought forms that
it's their negative, their choice of a negative path.
negative path. So as we discussed before we went live, we were talking about the law of one material, channeled material in the 70s. And they say in the law of one material, they don't call it, I love the vernacular they use, because they don't say negative or positive. They say you're on a path of service to self or service to others.
Service to self or service to others, yes.
Yeah, I love that, because when you think of all the terrible things that happen in the world, somebody that abducts a 20-year-old and locks them up and rapes them, they're doing it through that path of service to self. There's something that person feels that they're going to get. They're going to feel, I don't know, they're going to feel like they can control somebody. They're going to feel powerful. They're serving the ego, which feels small, and they're trying to bolster the ego.
Yeah, and we fool ourselves into doing that all the time anyway, because it's a tenuous walk sometimes. But I appreciate you saying that, because I think I'm going to work to change my verbiage on that.
Yeah.
Because like you're right, there is no such thing as a negative soul. We're all part of God. We're all part of Source, and there's no negativity in that. But we are having the experience we choose to have, and that decides some of our future lives.
Let me ask you this question. I hope I remember it. I'm going to say, I was going to let Ed. I'll get back to you. So if the trauma of the third density human experience accelerates soul growth, then why would we want to evolve where there is less to little or no trauma? Like, how does that help the soul's evolution?
It's different. It's different. We have to get past the trauma and self-loathing and blame and all the self stuff. That's our journey in the next step, is getting through that. And then when we can clear that out of our minds, then our minds are cleared and primed to evolve them in a way that we can become manifestors, physical manifestors. We can teleport. We'd be superheroes if we wanted, but all that's available to us. But we have to let all of those voices in the back of our head, all the stuff we hear that tells us we can't do this and can't do that, or somebody's doing this to you, got to let it all go, and then we can move on. So it's part of the process.
Yeah. My guides are saying to me that it's just a different experience. When you are incarnated into a third density experience where trauma can be experienced, it's something that the soul is wanting to experience. But there are many levels of experiences and different planets and different dimensions and different densities that the soul can also play in. And yes. And just what you said, the next level is about exploring your creativity. So I call myself a teacher of deliberate creation, helping people know that they are the creators of their reality, not just from the earth experience, but from the soul's experience. Because as you say, you created all of it, like you designed it all from your soul's experience. So getting in touch with your soul essence so that you remember that what you're going through, you actually designed it. And so you stop playing the victim. Yes. And so they're saying the next experience on planet Earth is like exploring more of that creative path.
Yeah.
Because most of us are in survival mode. Yes. All the time, rather than being in what else can I create? What next? What else? What next? Like an inventor, or, like we see it with AI and we see it with technology, inventing the new and the next and the best. We can also do that with consciousness. What else can we experience? What else can we create in a human experience? Yeah.
And it was a really key point that you said about letting go of the self, what was it? The self-blame. I forget your word you used, but
being a victim.
The victimness. Because once you understand and remember the process of you created your whole life, you're like, oh wait, I'm not a victim to anybody. I chose every single thing. They were here to
Yeah.
assist me.
They were here to assist me. So this is an interesting question from ED. Can we ask Chris if he knows how implants, the liquid crystal implants into the third eye? Who implants the liquid crystal implants into the third eye? Can we ask Chris if he knows who implants the liquid crystal? Do you know?
I
What
do
is it?
not. I do know that
No.
there are implants that are interdimensional. I had to have one removed from me recently. So
Really? Where was it implanted?
the bottom of my left foot, at the ball of the foot, in there, that meaty part.
And what was the purpose of the implant?
It was to keep me connected to a negative interdimensional AI system. And then I found out I was in the hospital, and guidance came and got me and took me out, and they showed me the whole thing. And they said, well, this, because the doctor comes in and he's like, Chris, you're a very unusual person. And I cannot tell you how many times I hear that. I'm very unusual. I'm like, yeah, okay, what are you talking about? He says, there is a void in your foot. I'm like, what do you mean a void? He goes, there's like an empty space in your foot. I'm like, how does that happen? He goes, I have no idea. He said, I've never seen it before. And so that evening, guidance took me out of my body and explained to me that that was a vortex or a portal, however you want to look at it, to an AI system that's out in another dimension, kind of off the planet, off of Earth. And that many, many, many people are connected to it. And they keep you drained. They keep you, it's an attempt to guide you in the way it wants you to go. But I've never been that person. They should have known that at the beginning, but they didn't. But it was time for that to come out of my foot, and so it did, and it came out. In fact, before the day after he left, and before guidance took me that night, I was pushing on the bottom of my foot. I don't know why. I thought, well, there's a void. I don't see a void in my foot. It was surface stuff, right? It was a little injury, but it was surface. And I'm pushing on it, and this thing about the size of a lentil pops out of my foot. And I'm like, oh, what is this?
So you took it out yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, how did you get it out? But you saw it.
Yeah, it came out. And then that night, guidance took me and explained everything to me. Said, you're now disconnected from that.
What did you do with the lentil?
I didn't know it because I hadn't been guided that yet. So I just thought it was some gross little fleshy thing. I didn't know what it was.
So you just threw it away?
Threw it away.
Yeah.
But the guidance said that in our third, fourth density experience, it's a void. In the density and dimension that was placed in, it's a solid object.
But you experienced it as a fleshy solid object when you squeezed it out of your foot.
I did.
But on an X-ray, it looks like a space. It looks like a void.
There's a hole there. There was just a void. Well, okay. I didn't think anything of it until that night when guidance explained it all to me. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm glad to get rid of it.
So it was vibrating at a frequency that our machines, like an X-ray machine, can't pick up.
No.
It just sees it
all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just looks like a space, which dumbfounds the doctors.
Yes.
But when it came out, it looked physical. It was sort of fleshy looking. Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Okay, so let's explore. ED says, what are you saying here about implants? I have 2 physical implants in my hand, and people have told me that they were blood blisters. 10 years later, they're still there. Interesting. So you had these NDEs, 9 when you were a teenager, and then when you were in your 20s. Did you have more than that? Was that all to get you in contact with your guides? Like, why did you have all those out
They
of
all
body?
taught me something different. First of all, I was no longer afraid of death. Having the drowning experience. I thought, oh, this is beautiful. I could go now. That's fine. And then the others was then I learned flying through space. I'm like, that Earth is kind of a tiny little thing over there. I'm like light years away and seeing all sorts of phenomenal things. So that taught me that there's a intergalactic component to who we are. And then the other, I learned to forgive.
Beautiful. Do you want to expand on that story? How you learnt to forgive?
Well, when I was taken and I was, kept and physically, sexually abused and all that, when I was out of that experience, I didn't blame them, and I know I probably should have. And my grandmother said, well, you need to tell the police. And I'm like, so I did, but it didn't change anything about how I looked at it. I'm like, they're on their journey. And I didn't have the memories at that time that I had chosen that experience for some reason. I just had love for them, because I knew they were missing something and they saw it in me. And if I could share that, okay. And I know that may be a survivor's, thinking pattern, but it works for me anyway.
So you said you didn't have the memories that you have now. When did the memories come back? And how did they come back of all that this physical form that you're wearing had been through? And when did all that happen?
The memories of being taken were always there. I didn't remember everything about them drowning me in the, there's more to it, of course, but in that pink gel, and I didn't have the memories of that necessarily for quite a long time, and that's part of, because there are other aspects of my experience the first 20 years, part of the work that I was doing for the military, and I always had these flashes of memory. I could visually see everything in the room and every person in the room, but I didn't know the context. So I just held all these memories, and for a long time, I thought I was just had a vivid imagination, and I still do, my brain's wide open to that sort of stuff. But I just assumed that's what it was. And then I realized later that's not what it was. When I had a Kundalini opening, early 2000s, I literally thought I was insane. I went to this Loma Linda University in California, one of the world's best neuro research hospital institutes. I went all the way to the top. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, you're not answering my questions. Who's next? All the way to the top. And they come in and they say, Chris, you're perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And I must have had a disappointed look on my face, because this guy, he runs the entire place, right? He's like, I mean, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm fine. But because I thought I was insane, because my brain would vibrate, physically vibrate, and parts of my body would physically vibrate, and I could feel energy, and I didn't know what it was. I had nobody to teach me any of this stuff. We were raised fundamentalist. All this stuff is satanic and evil. That's how I was taught. So I had to let go of the past. I had to let go of all that stuff. I put God down I put all that information, I set it down, and I said, oh, you can strike me down if you need to. I totally understand. But I have got to figure this out for myself. I can't listen to others. I have to find out. And so that's how the journey began, and so it created quite an experience, I have to say. But yeah.
So, wow. Sorry, I've got a million questions swirling around in my head. So how did you sort it all out? Did you go for hypnosis sessions, or did you start to meditate? How did all these crazy ideas and memories come into a memory of who you are and who you've been and what it all means? And how did you know that you were guided and contact your guides? I know, a million questions all in one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's all good. Well, how I became aware that I'm communicating was I would like put out information in my thinking. okay, if this is the case, then this is going to happen over here. And either it would happen or it wouldn't. And that kind of guided me to beginning to understand that what I'm doing is I'm hearing guidance. You know, I'm hearing, they're putting thoughts in there, helping me evolve. And so I practiced that for a long time. I would watch psychic TV shows, the ones that I felt like were real, at least in part. And they would say something to the effect, oh, there's this spirit in the house that's a female. And I'm like, no, it's a male. You know, and by the end of the show, they figured out it was a male. So I would practice, you know, pulling information in.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful. And then all these other memories, others would come in, and then I would be able to stitch them together. Like I remember sitting, you know, in a small room on a stainless steel table before they erased my memories. But I remember exactly who was there. I remember exactly what they were doing, because that's what I did for a while to serve the U.S. military. We would transfer memories, sometimes consciousness as well, if they were injured and were dying.
Okay, hang on. So a part of your mission or work as a super soldier was to erase people's memories and transfer consciousness.
Yes.
How did you do that?
Okay, I can explain it. Our pineal gland, we're all aware of that, has calcite crystals in it. And unfortunately, a lot of people think those calcite crystals are what they need to dissolve and get out of their brain. No. Calcification is something different, but you need those calcite, tiny crystals in your brain, because your pineal gland is under hydraulic pressure. And that hydraulic pressure squeezes these crystals. And when these crystals are squeezed, they create piezoelectric energy. And that is the energy your brain uses for synapses, for thoughts, for sending out to the nervous system. So you need those calcite crystals in there. So that process, because everybody's different, everybody's brain is different. Just like fingerprints, there's no two people with the same fingerprints. The vibration that's created in the pineal gland by those calcite crystals is your frequency, and it can be found and measured. And the military knows that. If you're in the military, they know what your frequency is.
So it's your energy stamp, your energy signature is what I'm looking for, your energy signature. And this is how we identify each other when we're not in body, rather than bodies and names and personalities. And
exactly right.
It's an energy signature. Yeah, go on. Yep,
we take it with us. Whatever body we're in, we take that with us. That's who we are. That's our soul, is that frequency. And so when you know a person's frequency, which military does, if you're in the military, they know your frequency, then they have these devices that they can put up against your temple. And then when they do that, they can push a button, and that device, it's like a handheld thing, that device creates the exact same frequency, because they dial it into the computer, and it creates a stronger signal. So your consciousness is drawn to it. So you're in this little handle now. And then if they're going to transfer you, they'll put you in exact copy of you, and they'll let that button go. And then now you're in the new body. It's that fast. If they want to erase memory, they still know your frequency. So they go to the computer and they put in your frequency. And I said earlier, time is a wave. It is a wave. And as the wave goes up and down, the peaks and the valleys are different. Like every moment that wave goes through, there's a stamp, a signature, a time stamp. And then if they want to erase, say you're a super soldier and you were out for the day and you experienced some horrific things, and you want to get rid of those memories, or they want you to get rid of these memories, then they'll punch in the time of day to start erasing the memory and the time of day to stop erasing the memory. It could be a moment, it could be 40 years. It doesn't matter, because they have time stamps for both, for all, because they know how to calculate it. Again, that's information and technology we trade with higher races.
Oh
So
my
come
God,
in
Chris.
and there's nothing left of those memories. So you can't
Yeah.
just take in the memory of your experience, like somebody you didn't like meeting. You can't just delete that person from your memory. You delete that whole block of memories. So it could be moments or a whole lifetime.
I've got so many questions, and we've got about 15 minutes left of the show, and I've just got like a whole another show worth of questions that have been.
Yeah, we
Okay,
have
so
Nemus, and that's like
how
all
and
the
there's
ways.
quite a few questions here too that I'll get to. How Okay, so when we're incarnating into the human form, we come from infinite knowing
Mhm.
into forgetting who we are. How does that work? Do you know? Like, how does a consciousness not remember all its past lives or who it is as a soul, like in the earth experience? Because I would imagine that in other experiences, you don't have that amount of forgetfulness. I mean, how does that work? That's
Well,
obviously. Mhm.
as within the fourth density experience, for example, like halfway through, or any time as an individual, but as a race of humans, about halfway through the fourth density, which is a few thousand years, then we will not need to forget anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
The purpose of forgetting is to even the playing field and give our soul every opportunity to make its own choices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
why. So we continue seeking God, continue seeking source.
I know the why. I want to know the how, but it might be bigger than this show. You know,
Well, the
Preston
how
Bennett.
is quick. Quickly, I can just touch on it. We can talk about it another time. The Earth has an electromagnetic grid, around it. It's natural, but it's also adjusted. And on top of that grid is a computer program. So the Earth grid and the matrix is built within the grid. So it's a natural planet, and there's also this supernatural component to it.
Yeah.
And so that supernatural component, you don't forget. But when you're born, our memories are just simply wiped temporarily, because when you leave the body again, it all comes back to you.
Yeah. I mean, I've had Preston Dennett. Do you know Preston Dennett? He's a UFO researcher, out of body experience. He's amazing. And he and Dolly have a show called The Light Gate. And anyway, I'll put you in contact with him. So Preston is somebody that has complete conscious memory of who he is out of body every night, because, the out of body experience happens every night. So he is hanging out with his dead relatives and his live relatives, sometimes in different realms of existence. He does a lot of other things, as we all do, but he's spoken to his brothers and sisters who are also out of body at night and said to them, will you remember this conversation when you wake up in the morning? And they say, no, I don't have the ability to remember that, which is the earth experience, right? Which is the human experience. Most of us don't remember our out of body sojourns at night. We wake up, we have crazy dreams, we remember parts of it, but we don't have that full conscious memory like Preston does.
Yeah.
So he's evolved his consciousness enough to have that access, whereas most of us don't. So there's that forgetfulness that's happening all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that he does.
Okay, there's a couple of questions here. So Vladdy wants to know, how do you know if you've got implants? I feel like I have one as well.
Then you probably do, if you feel like you do.
You probably do, yeah. I would say to you, Vladdy, yeah, if you feel like you have one, you probably do. Scan your body with your consciousness. Yes. Like bring your image, like imagine yourself standing in front of you as an energy system and scan it, and ask your guidance to show you where in that system, that grid system, you have an implant, and you'll be shown. If that doesn't work and you're still in doubt, ask somebody else to do that for you.
Yes.
What's Desley saying here? Fascinating chat, thank you. Are birthmarks from previous lives or some type of implant? When I went through a past life, I was a soldier on a battlefield and received an injury to my aorta and bled out. I always had a birthmark at that location, but now it has disappeared. Oh, it's just disappeared, Desley. That's interesting.
That's cool, because birthmarks are one of the many types of clues we put into our life to help open our consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that it's disappeared. What do you want to say about it disappearing, Chris? Why has it disappeared?
He remembered. He doesn't need it anymore.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I met someone years ago. We became soul sisters for a minute who had the same. I've got a little birthmark just here, and she had the same birthmark in exactly the same place. I'm like, soul sisters. Whatever we experienced, we had this little mark. Sometimes you have, what's ED saying here? Sometimes you may have a remembrance of having a checkup and having something happen. X-rays aren't always telling. Dr. Leah told me to have an ultrasound scanned. I think that was in view of something we said ages ago. We were talking about the implants.
Mm-hmm.
And Lisha says here, any inside knowledge when our governments will admit to their knowledge of galactic peoples? Yeah, good question, Lisha.
It is.
Any inside? You always get asked this question, do you?
No, I don't mind that part. I mean, it's exhausting because it's like, come on.
Come on.
It's like they haven't cleared a lot of our governmental agencies who have a chokehold on technology and are making money, and then or like the U.S. we continue to use the excuse we need it for protection from other nations. I'm like, well, if we all had it, either we'd blow ourselves up or none of us need it at all. So in an answer to your question, like I said, in 100 years, this is going to be an extremely different planet. I would say in the next couple of years, there's going to be some real information coming out.
Well, there has been in the last few years.
There has.
I mean, Alicia will laugh because I talk about this all the time. The telepathy tapes. You've heard about the telepathy tapes podcast? No. So it's a viral podcast. It became bigger than Joe Rogan's podcast at one stage this year. Filmmaker Kai Dickens has just agreed to come on the show. Yeah, she agreed, and then she was bombarded with the big podcasts like the Ross Coulthardts and the Jesse Michaels and the Jay Shettys and the Joe Rogans and like all these people that have millions of views asked her to come on. And so she said, I'm too busy, I can't do your podcast. But I spoke to her recently and she's going to come on the show. Yeah, Alicia loves the telepathy takes. Anyway, so she's talking to people that are working with nonverbal kids on the spectrum who are all communicating telepathically. They go to a place called the Hill, which is like the Hill of Thought, where they meet in another realm and they talk and have friendships and stuff like that. Stephen Simon, who was on the show recently, is a filmmaker. He made a movie called Indigo, which was about kids doing this that weren't on the spectrum, that they would all communicate on the telepathic internet. And they just were all telepathic. So this has become a viral podcast, which means the world is changing, Chris. Stuff's going on, this year. And Ross is doing an amazing job of getting disclosure out there, and his mind is being stretched and bent as he's speaking to more and more people that are saying they're communicating telepathically with craft. And there's this love vibration when they're talking to a machine. And so there's big stuff happening in the world because it's always, all this conversation has always been happening, but it's now happening on the world stage. It's happening on news programs and Joe Rogan, talking to millions of people. So, yeah, I think that things are, with critical mass, things will accelerate quite quickly from here on in. What do you think? What have you been shown? Like you're the man. I've
just been shown that, like in the next couple of years, things will be quite different as far as enlightenment with humanity, meaning what they'll know more, certainly know more than they know now. And that's like a pretty big step. And they, so people know that there are thousands and thousands of ships in another frequency off of our planet, just waiting for us to get our act together. Then they'll all come down and they'll help. But we got to.
So Dolly Saffron from the Lightgate, which is another show on this network, and she is a ET in human form as well, and she drives ships. When in her human form, she drives ships. And so she has said for the last few months, maybe 6 or so, that because of the sun's unstable energy and the electromagnetic energy that the sun's putting out at the moment, that ET is not hovering in our space. Have you got any insight into that?
No, I haven't. It could very well be true. I mean, who knows? I don't know everything. Nobody does. I just know they're standing. They're out there waiting to come and land. if we had a cataclysm, which we hopefully won't, then they would all come down, at that point. But because they're
Well,
ready.
well, that's actually Dolly's story. Her story, her timeline is that there will be a cataclysm and that they will come down and pick up humanity after the cataclysm.
Mhm.
That's her story. I don't know if I want to believe in that one.
Well, I think we can manifest whatever story we choose
Whatever,
as a race.
yeah, whatever timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. The Earth will
Yeah.
do what it needs to do to evolve, with or without us.
We have 5 minutes left. Anything else? We didn't even talk about the deems. Oh, sorry. So, so that this is your technology that you were given from the ETs. God, that went so quickly. Let me just screen share here. That for healing, and I wanted to ask you about it because, as I said, it looks like a little bit of a wrench. There it is on screen there.
I've never thought about it as a wrench, but
But what are they? I don't even know if I've got the right word, but is it a wrench? Not big. How do you know what gets shit together? Is that anything? Anyway, and why did they give you this technology instead of just talking about consciousness technology? Like, why do we need this physical technology for healing and pain relief rather
because
than
most of us don't realize we can do it ourselves, that we don't need anything. This is just something to help us learn that temporarily. And then once we remember, oh, I can heal my body, or remember how, then we don't need anything. We don't need med beds. We need nothing. But we're not there yet. These are just steps along our evolutionary path. And these have been around for millions of years. This is basically fashioned after the Ankh from Egypt.
Yeah.
And but it really is. It really works. It's a wonderful piece.
Hold it up again. Yeah. So inside it is a whole lot of magnets, and it changes the electromagnetic frequency of your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's two ways to create piezoelectric energy. One way is by having a magnet, because this is a magnet, and this is a magnet. By forcing a magnet to go against its polarity, you create piezoelectric energy. And so you put that energy into your body, and that's the energy that's in your nervous system. So it interacts directly with the nerves. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many people, hundreds and hundreds of people that, just swear by it,
Yeah. I didn't realize that just hold it up again, that little thing, you can take that off. It's magnetized on there. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I do that because because it's a little heavy, it's 1.5 pounds. So if you drop it and it breaks, because these are quite brittle, they don't break easily, but they will break. If you drop them, then you can get a new one and put it on there. Works just the same.
What you said about
24 karat gold coated. There's another one that is not.
What you said about the technology being a precursor to the understanding that we could do it with consciousness is what Susie Hansen has said. Susie Hansen is a New Zealand contactee. Do you know Susie Hansen?
Oh, I need to learn more of these people.
Oh, okay. So she's in her, I don't know, late 60s, 70s now, but she's been doing it for years. But she has memories of being up on ship as a kid and being taught by the Greys. And she calls herself a dual soul. She wrote a book called The Dual Soul Connection.
Wow.
And she was shown a lot of technology that has now, as a kid, that is now on the planet. One of them is a device that you hold in your hand, which you can scan the body like a mini X-ray, but it's not just X-ray. You can look at you can switch the frequencies. You can see the blood. You can see the nerves. You can see the bones. You can see, you can switch the frequencies. And I said to her, why the ETs gave us this technology? Why are they giving us technology when I can scan someone's body and do it with my consciousness? And she said exactly the same thing. She said, until people understand that you can do it with your consciousness, then, using these devices is the precursor.
Yeah, it's just to help us remember rather.
Yeah. Oh, darling one, this has been amazing. It went so quickly. And I've got a million more questions. I don't even know if I've got your whole story in a linear way because it's so time circular.
We're so far up to Mimas, so we can do it again and talk about Mimas.
Love to do it again. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. Sorry I didn't get to all of them. What are you saying here, Alison? How do we know what gets together and must be there? I don't understand that question. But thanks, Vladdy. Thank you, darling one. And thank you, Chris, for coming on the show. You are a wonder. Thanks, Shirley. What are you saying there? Super chat. I'm kind of blown away. Yeah, I know, Shirley. I know.
Take it easy on the information.
We're stretching the mind. We're stretching that grey matter. And Desley loved it.
And if anybody has want to ask questions, they can send me an email on the deemscompany.com website. At the very bottom, there's emails and contact information. You know, I enjoy answering questions. It may take me a few days, but I'll get to you.
And we'll get Chris back on the show. And also under all the podcasts, there is a link to my website where you'll see all of Chris's links and stuff, and you can find out more about Chris on the link there. Thank you, darling one. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you, everybody.
Big love.